Failure is not consequential in our business. It's somewhat welcomed. It's like, okay, look, if you're not failing sometimes, you're not pushing hard enough. Right. Like you have to push to the point where sometimes something pushes back, and then you have to figure out how to get back to that place and beyond. Because if everything's going well, especially at a business, I just don't think you're trying hard enough, right? Like you have to be pushing things and sticking your finger in the electrical socket once in a while and figuring out what's going to happen. And that's a big piece of it.
Welcome back to another episode of Chew on This for season 2. Today, we get the honor of bringing on someone that probably has one of the widest experiences in their resume. We're bringing the CEO and co-founder today of Stuffed Puffs, which is Michael Tierney. And Michael, it's an honor for you to spend time and give us your time to explore what you've been doing and building. And thank you so much for coming on, Chew on This.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I think it'd be awesome for someone who doesn't know you to maybe give 30 seconds, 60 second just brief on what you're doing now and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So what I'm doing now, most of my day is consumed by filling marshmallows. I am the founder and CEO at Stuffed Puffs, and we have kind of revolutionized the marshmallow. My background has always been in food. So I didn't go to an Ivy League business school. I didn't go to any business school at all. I started working in restaurants and in kitchens, professional kitchens, when I was 12 years old for free because they couldn't pay me, but I just wanted that experience. And that ballooned to me going to culinary school, working in some of the restaurants you mentioned. And I got to a point at those restaurants where I could kind of peek my head over the wall and realize that the grass may not be any greener on the other side for me personally. And so I took this passion for food and brought it to retail.
That's incredible. The last word you just said, retail. I'm going to segue that right into...
Yeah, I'm the old school guy.
I'm going to segue that into... And, you know, it's important because, like, we talk so much about D2C and online stuff, and all of us are kind of peeking our head over and saying, like, what is the other side like? And, like, it's going to be a huge breath of fresh air to talk to you because there's probably so much that we're going to learn, too. But
this is more of like a mentoring session.
Yeah.
It's funny when you ask me to do this, I say, guys, you know that like 97% of my business happens in store.
That's exactly why we called you. But it'd be awesome if you can like dive into from whether you want to touch on Mikey's or go straight to Stuffed Puffs, right? It'd be awesome to understand like you took a path that probably maybe back in the day was probably the only path before D2C kind of built out, but it's all retail and relationships, right? It's synonymous. Mm-hmm. And so at some point you started building relationships. What does that look like? And maybe if you can connect it to how do you do it today,
sure,
would be awesome to touch on.
But just to give a kind of headline on why retail, right? So everyone goes D2C. And my concern with D2C is I'm not the world's most brilliant marketer. And you have to be a really good marketer to be super successful in the D2C space. But the other thing, especially with Stuffed Puffs, was all around the intellectual property, right? We created something new. We created a new process. We created a new capability. Tech that I wanted to go big scale day one in a place that had a finite amount of space, because that was going to garner the most eyeballs, not just from consumers, but from the entire CPG landscape. So that's why I chose to go that route. Look, the relationships are the whole thing at retail. You have to have a great product. You have to be able to provide margin to the retailer. You have to be able to provide something to the consumer that they get value, they can derive value from at an affordable price point. But those relationships that you build with those retail partners can make or break your entire journey in a place that has a finite amount of space, and they control that space versus Amazon or other online platforms. You can put anything up at any time, and then the market bears whether it's successful or not. So it is a very different landscape.
I think for us, what I'm a little nervous about when like we're about to hit Walmart, right? The one thing
I
that
happen to know that
Michael knows this very well. My biggest fear is right now we're so focused on D2C, right? We know how to market for online. How have you gone into retail without a D2C presence and still found success, right?
Sure.
At least for us, it's like now I'm thinking, okay, how do I drive awareness for our brand? through, paid or influencers or whatever it is. And like, that's what's keeping me up at night because I don't know that space. But you guys seem to have done it
Without even DTC.
with nothing on D2C. So
Yeah.
how do you find success there?
It's a great question. So we still leverage social, we still leverage search, we still leverage influencer. I think all of those things are like the new school, iconic linear television and print media and the such. But for us, the big piece is the shopper marketing piece. And so display, end cap, pallet drops, anywhere we can billboard inside this finite amount of real estate in the store is where we garner the most exposure. And so instead of having a brand page on Amazon or pushing ads to be the number one on the search ranking list, what we're worried about is how do we maximize square footage in the most prominent places in the stores where we're able to get the maximum exposure from people who are pushing their cart down the aisle. And that's what we put our dollars towards most prominently from a marketing perspective, is really hitting that shopper thing and doing that really effectively.
So what does that process actually look like? Is that something that retailers offer you and you kind of just sign up for? Like, how do you even get those opportunities?
Look, it depends on the retail. With Stuff Puffs, we hit a bunch of different seasons throughout the year, s'mores being the first one that we tackled. And so when you think about seasonal candy, there's always these tentpole moments in store, whether it's Valentine's Day or Easter or Halloween or Christmas holiday or summer s'mores, that they're always activating around. And depending on the retailer, there are some retailers that have, programmatic layout of what you can buy and what the offerings are, or some it's what you can bid. It's like an open bidding process. But the other thing is working with that retailer to show them, hey, look, we're going to drive growth for your category. We're going to give your consumer innovation, which is some of what they go to DTC for, right? Mm-hmm. Most times you're buying, laundry detergent, paper towels, those kind of things in store, and you're going to specialty or online for some of the more unique offerings. Let us bring innovation to your store. But if we're going to drive innovation and we're going to drive growth, we have to be able to tell the consumer that it's there. And so we need to be able to invest our dollars at your retailer in partnership with you so that we can drive that awareness to your shopper. Yeah. Whether that's on their digital platforms or in their physical stores, you're going to do a mix of that. But for us, that was the big thing. How do you separate yourself from just every other marshmallow? Mm-hmm. Because if you're just on the shelf, you're just another item. You have to figure out how to do that digital billboarding effectively in a retail physical landscape.
I feel like I've been seeing a lot of DTC brands now start to enter the retail space. Some of these guys like Muddy Bites, CrossNet, I think to your point, it makes sense that they, and hopefully we too, will bring some type of innovation, right? Specifically in the collagen space, right? Everything has been unflavored. And the whole thing that we've preached was how do we bring life to the category? How do we bring flavor to it? So I think that's where, if you are starting off at retail, it sounds like you really should lean into your actual USPs and what makes you different and show the retailers that, hey, like, we are a solid partner. Give us a chance and give us the opportunity to showcase why we are a good partner.
Yeah, and I think for us, it was interesting because we went retail first. So all of our growth was linear, right? We're just always growing. If you've built a giant D2C business and you go to retail and you try and preserve 100% of that D2C business, it's going to be really challenging to build a meaningful retail business because you're not prioritizing it. But if you can say, hey, look, this was how we got from A to B, now we're going to go play in a much more competitive landscape, and we're going to be okay exchanging dollars for dollars to grow this new kind of channel of trade for us. I think that's the only way you can make that jump effectively, because if you try and preserve what you have, by preserving it, you're prioritizing it, and then you're never going to get retail right. So whenever you're ready to make that shift, I think you have to be in the right cash position as a company. You have to have the right investor mindset for whoever your partners are to say, hey, look, over the next 12 months, 18 months, 6 months, if you do it really fast, we're going to make a dollar for dollar swap while growing and transitioning our business into this finite retail space.
It's incredible. I think one thing that I really wanted to touch on was talk about product for a second. I think for a lot of brands and founders and operators out there, everyone's always working in the motion of what to do to grow their business, right? Do this marketing tactic, or make sure retention is here, make sure you're exploring retail, diversifying Amazon, etc. But if you boil it all down, you're nothing without a good product. And good product is no longer good enough. It has to be great product. And if anything, if you can get closer and closer to like the only one of its type, I think is where you unlock it. Yeah. And so I'd love for you to unlock, like, what did it take? Because you must have had to be obsessive to make this work. Because I'd love for you to give some insight on the fact that you own the IP on being able to do this.
Sure.
So if you can give kind of a little bit of that journey of creating this product.
So the idea happened organically for Stuff Puff specifically. I was sitting around a campfire, and I wanted to make a s'more where the chocolate really melted. And coming from the 3 Michelin star world and juggling these 3 things over the fire and not being able to successfully do it, going, man, I either need to get another job because I'm not that good at this cooking thing, or there's a physics issue here. And so what I realized was you put the chocolate on the inside, and then when you roast the marshmallow, it will melt from the inside out, was going to be the best eating experience, and was going to innovate a space that hasn't changed since the 50s. And maybe even before that. Yeah. Marshmallows for consumers are big or small, right? It's jumbo or mini.
Yep.
And for the most part, if you ask consumers, and we've done this, what their favorite marshmallow is, they say Stay Puff, which is a character from the Ghostbusters movie. It's not an actual brand. And so we said, okay, interesting landscape. Let's take this place that has been ubiquitously considered an ingredient, and let's turn it into a fun place where we can bring candy to life. So how do we cross categories here? How do we make marshmallows a confection and a candy product again, while staying true to what they're used for today? We make a better s'more. We make a better cup of hot cocoa. We make a better Rice Krispie treat because there's a filling, whether it's salted caramel or cookies and cream or peppermint milk chocolate or our classic milk chocolate or 10 other things that we make, that brings something more to the table than just being a marshmallow. And so product's everything for us. And we ended up having to, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we ended up building all of our own manufacturing. And this journey started when I left fine dining in 2012, and we didn't hit retail shelves until 2019.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait.
So fanatical about product and making sure that it was the right form, and not taking no for an answer from suppliers who could have given me something half as good as what we make, or 25% as good as what we make, or a little different than what we make. And we've adapted and changed and developed and continue to innovate and iterate. But there was this core about having seamlessly enclosed edges and having a big volume of filling that would make this product what I thought would make it great and not make it feel like a gimmick. Because I could sell this to everyone one time, right? If I said, oh, there's chocolate in a marshmallow, would you rather have that than a regular marshmallow? Sure. Yeah. But if I put a tiny little bit of chocolate through it, or the ends were open and you roasted it and it melted everywhere and you had a bad experience, I would have a customer base of, one return, right? And so we were fanatical. I was fanatical about, making sure that we didn't launch with the wrong thing. And that goes back to the product piece. You could do everything else right, and you may have a good year or 2 or 3 because the market's so big in the US, but you're never going to have any staying power. Yeah. And
what made you know what would be right, though? Like, you were fanatical towards something.
Sure.
And was that designed in your head from day one, or was it something you iterated on within the R&D process too? And like, oh wait, I'm learning that this may not even be the direction.
Oh yeah. I mean, there was tons of iterations. Actually, if you go back to my mom's house, so after I left fine dining, I moved back to Long Island, cash preservation, to build this business. Thankfully, my mom would have me. If you go into her kitchen and you open her cabinets, she never took them down. It's all these Post-its of like the original recipes for everything, and the different iterations, the different mixtures, and how we did all of this stuff. And so, yeah, there was, I don't know, probably not thousands, but it's hundreds of variations I went through. What's the right size? What's the right filling ratio? What does today look like? How do I get one that when you squeeze it down, it just goes to all four corners of the graham cracker? It doesn't fall short. It doesn't fall over.
Crazy.
So there's no reason to. I mean, I probably spent more time thinking about marshmallows than anybody on the planet should. But all of these things subconsciously you would think about if you bought the product, right? Low filling, too small, too big, too messy, not a good enough quality chocolate. All of those things would become apparent if you put your dollars to go buy it and you didn't have a great experience. So yes, to finish that, everything goes back to product. If you have a great product, the rest of it you'll figure out, and it doesn't mean the rest of it's easy, but if you don't have a good product, it's just going to be like trying to catch sand through your hands. Like it's just not gonna stick.
Right. So just continuing on product and innovation, right? For us and maybe other D2C brands who may have, a community that they can kind of lean on to for almost immediate feedback, right? I think I've told this story before. We launched a product. It was our second or third product. It was our superfood pinks, right? 35 superfoods. One of the stronger ingredients in there was cayenne pepper, right? And the first round, the first round was, we as, South Asians, we have a high tolerance for spice. And when we first tried it, we thought it was fine, right? Now you get
me to taste it.
You get some other people to taste it. And almost immediately within our Facebook group, we started seeing comments like, oh, this is so spicy. Like, what is going on?
You did like the Pocky's one chip and a powder.
And we're like, shit, did we mess up, right? And so immediately we got that feedback and we were able to kind of get the next round sorted out so that it was a little bit more balanced and we fixed the problem, right? For brands that are strictly in retail, right? How are you getting that feedback to, I guess, if there is a need to make the product better, but how do you get that information to know if you can better something or, get ideas to innovate? I know you guys have like a ton of flavors too, right? Do you get any data back from like retailers to suggest like, okay, let's come out with these flavors? Like, how do you handle
that's a good question. I'd take it in pieces. So yes, it is a lot harder to take a big bet because in a lot of cases there's slotting fees. There's all this fee structure that goes along with bringing something to market. And if you're wrong, it's a very expensive thing to be wrong about. If you're wrong about posting something on Amazon, you're probably okay. You're out product cost, right? But you're not out much more than that. But if you were also a version 1 buyer of Stuff Puffs in 2019, not the same product that we have today, right? It's much better. So we've continued to innovate and refine, and you can do that by staying within your UPC, right? So as long as you keep your weights and measures the same, you keep ingredients the same, you can update some of these things within the guidelines of the FDA, you can continue to make better process improvement, make better ingredient selections, and just get a better product as you're having this feedback loop. Because just because something's bought in retail, I promise you, people still go to Facebook to talk about it. Like, you don't have to be a D2C brand for the social community to respond.
That's right.
And so we are monitoring that constantly, probably at the same kind of frenetic pace that you guys are as a D2C brand. And we do get reviews on retailers, right? So you get verified receipt reviews where somebody clearly bought the product, they've said something good, they've said something not so good, and you can aggregate and react to that. The other thing we do in a lot of cases is we'll focus group something ahead of time, not the way a big CPG business would. Sometimes that's, we've got 150 people who work at Stuff Puffs. If 140 of them say that this is a good product, that's a pretty good dichotomy of America. If 20 say that's good, we're probably going back to the drawing board, right? So we do that. We've done more formal kind of focus group testing, but we kind of lean on our own R&D ability to say, like, look, if we keep all of ourselves honest here, this is a good product. This has, good product market fit. It's got, good pricing. It's got all of these things that make sense. Flavor's good. And we'll bet on that. And we're not always right. But yeah, we pay attention to that stuff, much like you would in a D2C brand.
Got it. So reviews, online, social, you're getting that feedback loop.
Sure. Yeah. People flock to keyboards, whether you buy it on the internet or you buy it in
very,
a
very
store.
true.
No,
Yeah.
if somebody doesn't like something, they'll
They'll let you
let
know.
you
They hit the
know.
keys
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, the market, the climate, and the overall kind of overarching thing is just challenges, right?
Sure.
I think there are two kind of maybe things that maybe you can kind of touch on. Challenges in manufacturing and building that. I think you've built now 2 manufacturing plants. Is that correct? It's incredible. I'd love for you to touch on the journey there, but then also a massive team and building 150 people, you said, a team of such large stature. And so managing kind of both those things, maybe you can touch on a little bit, like what are the challenges that have come with you building your kind of vertically integrating yourself and owning that whole thing versus just finding someone who can do it and say, this isn't my problem.
Yeah.
What's been the challenges there, and love for you to.
Sure. So part of the delay from 2012 to 2019 was I went all over the world, short of Antarctica and Africa, looking for somebody who could make our product. We were in Asia, I was in Europe, I was all over North America, South America, Central America, trying to find that co-manufacturing partner. And every time I went, either somebody said, hey, we did this, doesn't work, go get a real job. Or they said, we know somebody who tried to do this. They said it didn't work. We don't want to touch it. Time out. This is outside of, our horse blinders of what we know how to do. And what I wanted to do was really push the envelope on process capability inside of confection. And to be clear, we're still making candy. We're not making rockets. There's technology out there that's way more sophisticated than what we're doing. But in our space, we really push the boundaries of how to make candy at a commercial level, right? Not in a kitchen. And so it's an expensive journey, right? I mean, part of it is manufacturing is a massive gating hurdle from a cost perspective. And the second piece is there's this old adage in CPG, especially recently, where you can only do one of two things well. You can either be a manufacturer and co-pack for people and focus on manufacturing as a startup business, or you can be a brand, and then you're basically a sales and marketing company. Don't do both. And I said, okay, I'm going to try and avoid doing both for as long as possible until that becomes impossible. And then we're going to just swing for the fences and try and make something happen here. And so we found a great partner in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, the guys at Factory, you guys know them, who have a background in food manufacturing and have, had some success multiple times at big scale, whether it was in pet or it was in pasta or it was in other verticals of the CPG space, taking crazy ideas and bringing them to life. So, it took 7 years, but we found a great partner in Factory and with Rich to bring Stuff Puffs, the vision, to life. And that bet changed everything. So if they didn't bet on this, I'd probably still be, tooling away with it.
In Long Island.
In Long Island. And the thing was, I never wanted to, I thought the idea was so arrogant to think the idea was so good that I didn't want to launch it locally. I didn't want to do a very small contained launch because I was afraid of the 4-minute mile effect, which is that, at one point, nobody could run a 4-minute mile. And then one person did it. And then everybody started doing it. Yeah. And so if we showed, especially because I knew how many people had tried this of all scales, big major multinationals all the way down to small players, had attempted this and said, it's impossible. If we proved the possible in a small way, that would have been a
fascinating
big problem in my mind. So I wanted to go national day one and just kind of carpet the whole country so we could have a little bit of a defensive strategy there. And we did that with Walmart, which has been an amazing partner for us since the beginning. But it is, to go all the way back, it is challenging to bifurcate between both worlds, because at one end you're trying to build a sales and marketing company while trying to supply that sales and marketing engine with a product that you have to make yourself. And our facility here in PA runs 24/7. So we have people in the building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, manufacturing candy or doing maintenance or doing sanitation to supply the sales and marketing piece. Even though it's one company, you could almost think of it as like a bifurcated setup. And that comes with a lot of challenges, and the key there is really, really good people. Yeah. Like if you don't have incredible people around you to do this, it's impossible to do all of that on your own.
That's right. And to touch a little bit more on that team, that growth, what are some of the critical hires that you had, like when you knew that this is happening now and I need to start scaling this? What were those few critical hires that kind of let you keep doing what you did best instead of kind of almost getting swallowed up with challenges on both sides?
Sure. It's funny. I think what you do best as the founder or the CEO of a company is whatever the company needs the most at that time. Like, you have to have some versatility to play across everything, because that landscape changes when it's you in a garage, and then it's you and 5 people, and then it's you and 50 people, and then it's you and 150 people. The mix of
Totally
what
different.
needs to be given to the business is completely different. And I did not come up with this saying, but there is a saying out there where, a good startup focuses on the couple fires that'll put them out of business, because 1,000 things are always on fire. You guys know this. I know this. You don't want to talk about it, but it's true. Everything's on fire all the time as a startup. And if you try and focus on putting out 1,000 fires, you'll put out none and you'll put yourself out of business. But if you say these 3 are going to knock me down, and I'm going to focus on 2 or 3 things with all of our energy, and I'm going to let these smolder in the background, that's okay. Because once you solve these 3, then the mix changes and you pick the next 2 or 3 or the next 5 or the next 1, and you just process through them, because you can't take on everything at one time. And so the key hires day one are a lot different than the key hires in 2020 or the key hires that we might make in 6 months. At the beginning, I had built these Rule Goldberg setups, and I had found some suppliers who were willing to take some risk on helping me co-develop some equipment. But I was not an engineer by trade. I think I've become pretty good at it at this point. I can turn a wrench. And I wasn't a manufacturing, I didn't have a manufacturing background. I had a fine dining background, which there's some tangential relationship there in terms of organizing people and doing all of that, but I didn't know scaled manufacturing. And so at the beginning, it was all about getting really sharp engineers, getting really good process people around the business. And then you have to build the commercial side. And then you have to build the management of the plant side, because you can't manage the plant every day, because the commercial business now needs focus. And you're just moving back and forth between those verticals. And as your business grows, you'll start, and make another running analogy. Not like you can tell I don't run, but I think I wish I did. You may start off and your business needs people who can run at a 20-minute mile pace. And like pretty much everyone can run or walk at a 20-minute mile pace. So you hire all these people, and these people are either evangelists, they're partners like you guys are, or they're people who are just looking for work. And you find that some of them are incredible. And then you start moving faster. And now you're running at a 15-minute mile pace. And some of those people who were good enough then are no longer good enough, and you have to make some tough decisions. And you find out that those people were incredible are just good now. And then you start running at a 10-minute mile pace. And then you start running at an 8-minute mile pace, and you run at a 4-minute mile pace. And the person who looked great when you were at the beginning was probably like a 10-minute mile runner. And now you're bigger and bigger and bigger, where you can attract different types and different levels and different caliber of talent.
That's big.
In saying that, it's not like we've had this incredibly high turnover, because there are a lot of people who have been on the Mayflower since we set sail. But there are also a lot of places where we've been able to upgrade and optimize and grow, and we had to be open to the fact that that was going to happen through the journey, or else we would have stifled ourselves.
Yeah. It's incredible.
A lot to take in.
Sorry, that was a big question. You had a big answer.
That's amazing.
That was a
That's
great
amazing.
answer.
It's incredible. I have one more question, but you go next.
Yeah.
So my let me phrase it right. Okay. Got it. In the D2C space, we have almost no barrier to entry when it comes to a few different categories like VMS or apparel, or a lot of the different larger category, beauty, etc. I want to talk about competition for you, right? When you look at like the confectionery space and even just walking down the aisles, right? I mean, there's like 3-4 major companies that run the show. I only had a small peek into it because my wife has worked at Ferrero and now Mars, And like,
So she's got 2 of the 3 on
yeah,
her
she's
resume.
got 2 of the 3.
She's got 1 more to clean
yeah,
up.
Mondelez is left. But like,
And Hershey.
and Hershey's. And when you look at that, right, you're literally carving your own face next to them, right? Because again, relating this back to product IP and creating something so unique. I'm just on a personal founder level really fascinated with the fact, like, is that like scary for you to like go up against, like, we're going up against other collagen brands.
Sure.
Okay. And some of them I've done great. Some of them are okay. Some of them are, but like, they're not like running categories that are literally across the world, globally. And like, you're literally saying, I'm just going to come here, sit next to you guys. How do you deal with that? Both on a ego trip, but also on like knowing like, hey, do I have what it takes to make it?
Yeah, so I think you gave the ego trip of that I'm carving a head next to those 4. We're at the bottom of the mountain building with some rocks, trying to carve something there. So there's no ego in it whatsoever. I think what it's been about is identifying that white space, right? And so we said, look, there are a concentrated number of players here, like you said. And when my frozen business was very much like your collagen business, we were playing against other natural brands of like sizes. Maybe they were 5, 6, 7 times bigger, but they weren't, $60 billion market cap companies. It's very different.
Right.
And so the only way to give ourselves the protection to play in that space was to make sure we came out with something that was truly innovative and had a moat around it. Because if we have a good moat around it, it's really hard to knock that off. And it had to deliver to the consumer. And so in 2020, first time we became the number 1 selling marshmallow at a mass retailer all summer. And you're like, all right, there's something to this, right? The other players had been doing it for 50 plus years, and
This was a year into launch?
This was a year into launch. Was the first time we ticked that, and that's a testament to the consumer got what we were doing right away. And so in the frozen space, the business we built was somewhat niche, right? We're gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, dairy-free, which sounds like the polar opposite of like, I'm going to put sugar inside of sugar and put it in the bag. And it was. In this space with Stuff Puffs, it's been interesting because we talked a little bit about marketing. Consumers got it, right? We put it in a traditional bag. We could have made any shape we want. We make a lot of shapes now, but we wanted to make a cylinder, white marshmallow, that had the closed ends so that it felt like a regular marshmallow.
Right.
And the packaging at the time was just a big chocolate splash. I don't know, you can probably find it somewhere, but it's long gone.
Pep will pull it up.
I'm sure Pep will find it. And it was this, we had no foresight to say, would we ever put anything inside of here besides chocolate? But at the time, we just made it this gigantic chocolate splash. And the consumer got it immediately, and it was all about that shopper piece. Like, if we can get out in the aisle and show you that we exist, we're going to take the bet that you're going to get it instantly. I don't have to educate you. You feel like you've known it your whole life because you've been putting chocolate and marshmallow together. Yep. And I've just given it to you in a form that feels familiar but better. Right. And so that's kind of how we tackled that. I've been thinking about marshmallows for like 13 years. Yeah, I've got my 10,000 hours.
No, it's crazy because I was just at where is it, like ShopRite, and they literally have like the end cap for it's graham crackers, marshmallows, Hershey chocolate, right? So you have to grab like 3 different things. Mm-hmm. This is like you're good to go, I want to transition a little bit into I think community building, right? So our sponsor, TapCart, basically they allow us to turn, our brand into an app, right? So our website is on there. There's a lot of value add there too, right? Blogs, recipes, whatever it is, they can manage their orders. Would you guys ever consider creating something where you have your shoppers in that, go into Walmart, whatever it is? Would you ever consider kind of funneling them into something like a community, whether it's an app or even like a Facebook group, to just build a relationship with the people that are buying your products? Or is it kind of like there's too many, retail shoppers to really even consider doing that?
No, I think it's really important to continue to foster our repeat purchasers, right? Because the people who attach early are the ones who are going to evangelize the brand, right? And there are going to be passerbys as you get bigger and bigger, but those high frequency shoppers are the ones you want to cultivate. And though we don't have an app, what we do is try and build a social community, especially around our Instagram following, where if you look at our Instagram, a lot of it is UGC. A lot of it is like, look how I took this product and turned it into something amazing. And we want to support that. We want to foster that. We want to put that out there, not only to support the people who are supporting us, but also to show all these incredible usage occasions for the product. And it, frankly, it also offsets the marketing need to do the traditional stuff. Because I don't know, if you don't have massive scale where you're spending 40, 50, $60 million a year on below the line marketing, you're not going to make enough noise to move the needle doing the traditional things that the big players do. And that's where things like influencer and community building and all of that really resonate, because it's our way at these smaller scales to have an impact, to have a voice, to feel not like a brand, but like a person, right? You want to have that relationship with your consumer that's at a human level. And I think you can do that, as a nimble brand.
I think that's where we wanted to see if we could, like you said, right, build a community on social. We have our customers as well, just from D2C. How can we stand out from the traditional retail experience, right? You go in, you pick up a collagen, you go home, right? How can we kind of make this like more immersive experience? And I feel like even like with the app, right? I feel like if you buy in the store, scan receipt, get some type of perk on the website or whatever it is. I mean, even like you guys, like you have a ton of recipes that you can, host somewhere, right?
Sure.
So I think that's also what we want to do, is how can we bridge the gap between D2C retail, bring the shoppers all together in one place and just offer value.
Yeah, I think when you think about a sales strategy and a tactic for go-to-market, you have to be mindful of which bucket you play in. And if you've built a big D2C business, you have to be mindful that if you're going to try and build retail, you have to be willing to give some of this up. Yeah. But as you think about your consumer doesn't think, oh, these guys are all retail or these guys are all D2C. They're interested in the brand and the product and the experience. And so that community is homogenated, agnostic of where the shopper's buying the product. And I don't think that you have a big delta, whether you're a strictly D2C brand, a strictly retail brand, a full-on omni-channel balanced brand, of saying, well, we're going to treat our community different, because those are your shoppers, those are your consumers, and they're fans of the brand regardless. Yeah.
So for brands that are just about to hit retail for the first time, right? Like, and this is a question I'm asking for us really, is what's the one thing that we really have to nail to make sure that we, come out swinging strong?
Focus. I mean, I think that's the big thing, right? So if you're going to take the bet on retail, I know your story a little bit, and you guys are going to go out with one retail partner here in a big way. Be focused on it and make that the priority. Is how do we grow this? And it's about, tapping into the resources that they have, whether their website in terms of, how do you put ad spend and fish where the fish are versus fishing 2 ways away in Google or in Amazon or in social. But it's also, how do you build that retail presence, that billboarding, and how do you not over proliferate SKUs where you don't have your core competence anymore? Because I think that happens way too early, where brands get too fragmented, they're too unfocused. And then you lose your identity. And so for Stuffed Puffs, we were very focused on building just that first classic milk chocolate flavor. And we brought that flavor from 0 to north of 20 million before we did any other innovation on one SKU. Smart. On a $3 bag of marshmallows. And so if we had over proliferated early, you wouldn't know where to focus, right? You'd have too many priorities, and with limited resources, you wouldn't be able to hit all of them. Yeah. Now we've got verticals and candy verticals, seasons verticals and front end, but they all still play off of it's a filled marshmallow concept. And if you lose that focus, like if you guys go and make a collagen detergent tomorrow, I would say, I don't know, that's the best idea, because how are you going to play an HBC and home goods is difficult. And so I think that's the big thing is like, look, if you're going to take the risk of doing this, make sure it's the priority, figure out how to make that community respond to your product, whether that's a national retailer like Walmart who sees 92% of Americans every year, or it's a small retailer in a geography like ShopRite, like you mentioned. If ShopRite's your first player, figure out how to make ShopRite work hard for you, whether it's doing social things where you're geofencing just the zip codes of the stores, or you're buying into their coupon programs, or you're buying into their circulars, or you're doing things from a shopper perspective. What you need to do is prove that velocity and that repeat, because if you can get that story right and you can figure out what the secret sauce is to do it in one place, then you can step it out.
Well said.
Love it.
We covered a little bit of challenges, but like, can you maybe reference one or two just mistakes like you made? And
We have another like hour.
Probably one that maybe like nothing probably keeps you up at night in terms of mistakes, but just one that you're like, what the hell was I thinking?
Look, I think this applies to you guys too. At some point you weren't in this space. And everything is a learning experience more than it's a mistake. Because if you don't know something and you go out and take the risk to do it and you fail but pivot and recover, I don't know. I don't know if you want to call that a mistake or not.
Still learned, yeah.
If you do that 4 or 5 times, it's a different story. Right. And so, no, I don't think the mistakes we've made keep me up at night ever. It's what's the next opportunity that keeps me up all the time.
Right.
But look, we've made mistakes all across the board. I mean, manufacturing alone was trial and error at the beginning. There was no one to help us. Right? All the OEMs, all the big players all said, you're crazy, you're out of your mind, it's never going to happen. And so when we built that first facility in Wisconsin, it was the people in that room that had to figure things out. And I mean, we've had some expensive mistakes trying to get this product off the ground. But if we dwelled on them and we let that consume us, we weren't going anywhere, right? So you have to just shove it to the side, go, okay, car hasn't gone off the cliff yet, pull the wheel, let's get back online and keep moving. And none of this is a straight line. Yeah. You know, a lot of this is test and learn and be reactive, right? You have to be very reactive and nothing sacred, right? You have to be able to just say, okay, I was wrong about this, cut it off, move to the next thing and keep going. And if you don't have agility through that, it's going to be over before it starts. Yeah. And I think that's what kills a lot of small brands, whether in this space or in any space, is just the lack of the agility or the lack of knowing when to let go of something and move to the next thing. And that speed and focus is key.
Yeah.
I got a quick one. Packaging versus pricing. If you had to pick one, what is the most important factor when somebody's just walking down the aisle? What do you think catches their eye first? Is it packaging, price? What should brands really like nail?
I mean, you have to nail both.
If you had to pick
hate
one,
to say it, I'd rather
one.
hit both of them pretty good than hit one perfect and blow the other one. The thing that has the stopping power down the aisle is for sure packaging, right? I mean, pricing, if you're doing a deal structure, you have a buy one, get one thing, sure, that's going to stop traffic too. But normal everyday pricing, packaging is going to be the stopping power. And you know, I think we learned this, if you want to talk about a mistake, is early on our packaging was very to the point. Now you're going to have to find it because we talked about it like 4 times. It was just this big chocolate splash. And in one of the 6 iterations we've had in refining our packaging, I think we got a little too cute in the sense that we said, oh, people are going to know what this is. And we made it look really good. And then we said, wait a second, hold on. Back to roots. Like, we need to continue to educate on pack what we are while still being aesthetically pleasing. Because if we don't do that well, how is the consumer going to know why they're paying this price for something? Pricing is huge, and I don't know that it's ever been bigger in our professional careers. We're all about the same age. Because of the pressures of inflation, because of the pressures of this post-pandemic environment, you know, Americans are in need of, quality pricing for really quality products. And I think we need to be cognizant of that, whereas through COVID, I think things got a little out of hand, but making sure that you're delivering value for whatever it is you're selling is imperative to that entry point, right? So you stop the consumer for your packaging, right? You guys have these beautiful pink bottles, and the consumer sees it, but if that price tag is 2x the one next to it, that's a big slope, right? And so you have to be able to not only have the stopping power, but also be able to have the affordability in your space of the store, whether it's digital or it's retail, to let the consumer take that product off the shelf and put it in their cart. And so that's why I'd rather be pretty good at both than perfect at one and way off on the other.
Yeah. What's next for Stuffed Puffs? Is this we'll see where it goes year over year and kind of taking it year by year? Is there a kind of 5-year plan of IPO or exit, or what do you personally want to see for Stuffed Puffs?
Sure. I mean, right now what we're focused on is growth. And we've done a really good job attacking that summer season, which has been coveted by very few players for such a long time. Like if you think about s'mores and who's in there, and then you look at Halloween candy, slightly different mix, right? There's a lot more players. And so for us, it's taking that tentpole moment for us in the summer and bringing it out across the whole year while lifting the everyday business. So coming out with things like our mini bites that have graham crackers on the outside, so you can take this poppable s'more moment in the car with you or on a plane with you, is a different occasion than what our kind of apex moment around summer s'mores is, but also touching all those other seasons, right? There's a marshmallow at Easter that does pretty well that I think we all know. I think we can play really well in that space. Right. I think we can bring value at Halloween. I think we can do incredible things around hot chocolate. So those are the things that I'm really focused on right now, is how do we bring that sales curve to lift those shoulders and make this thing, a really successful year-round business.
That's smart.
Love it.
Makes a lot of sense. Last question for me. I'm sorry. You're objectively speaking young.
Thank
and
you.
You've gone
it's the nicest thing anyone's said in a long time.
You've gone from, again, Michelin star fine dining, starting a frozen food company, starting Stuffed Puffs and building it into a deep 8-figure brand. But obviously this also comes down from a ton of discipline from your end too, right? I would just love to know on like just a founder to founder level, like how do you go about your day to day? Like there must be a routine, there must be a level of discipline to be able to build so much, learn so quick, and apply greatness in the sense of like growth in such a short span of time. So what is that like routine, or what are some of the must do's for you on a personal level?
That's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of things there. I am not robotically routined. I mean, there are people who are much better than me at, I'm going to get up at 4 every day.
So you don't do 4 a.m. cold plunges?
I do not do the cold plunges. I've been up 3 times this week at 4 a.m. So I do that. And, I think what I've done or we've done really well is we've never had that ego chip, right? So if a lawyer wants to talk to us at 11 o'clock at night, if a customer wants to meet at 7 a.m. on a Monday morning on the other side of the country, I don't care. Like their Sunday's gone, Saturday's gone, sleep's gone. Like we've always been really reactive to, if somebody wants to give us an opportunity to help us grow our business, we're always going to do that. I think the discipline level for me has been staying 4 or 5 steps ahead of where we are today. And even if I'm wrong about step 5 or 6, by the time I get to step 2, I've got a new step 5 or 6. Because if I play here, if I play just in the present, I can't look around the corner. And half of this is just looking around the corner to make sure there isn't a wall that you're going to run into. And so, playing checkers over chess is a really big mistake. Playing chess over checkers is really the way you want to do it. And we're trying to think so many moves out that I can allow our team to do what they're doing every day and try and figure out where we're taking the ship next. And that's been the thing we've been very disciplined at. And the other thing is, we move fast, right? Like, not to steal a Zuckerberg, move fast and break things, because breaking things in a manufacturing plant is super expensive. Breaking things in code doesn't sound so bad, but we do move quickly and we're very, very adaptive. So failure is not consequential in our business, it's somewhat welcomed.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, look, if you're not failing sometimes, you're not pushing hard enough.
Right.
Like you have to push to the point where sometimes something pushes back, and then you have to figure out how to get back to that place and beyond. Because if everything's going well, especially at a business, that's not a multinational conglomerate, I just don't think you're trying hard enough, right? Like you have to be pushing things and sticking your finger in the electrical socket once in a while and figuring out what's going to happen. And that's a big piece of it.
Love it. So much.
And you should
change everything.
you should sleep more than I do. If there's one thing I could change about my routine, it would be 8 hours of sleep every day. And I go into the day going, I'm going to do it today. Today's going to be the day. Never happens.
Never happened, right?
Every episode towards the end, we have something to chew on. What's the one thing that you want the viewers to kind of take away from this episode?
God, I should have saved some of that last comment. You're killing it. So, look, I think if you're anywhere on the spectrum from, let's call it 0 to 50 million in sales, and you're still a very small business trying to grow in this space, I think that the last piece that I was touching on like just being very focused on what you're doing, not getting married to anything, right? So whatever idea is out here, you have to be willing to adjust it. Like everything's in goo phase, but you're focused and you know where you want to go, but you're willing to adapt through it, is key. Like I think we see too often that people, you get attached to a branding, they get attached to a brand name, they get attached to a product line, and they can't see the writing on the wall that something about it isn't working,
right.
And they've got the horse blinders on. And so I think if you're, an entrepreneur starting off, you know nothing about what the outcome is going to be, no matter how smart you are, because you don't know how the market's going to react. And so once you're out there, you have to be very agile. You have to be up on your toes, and you have to be willing to change and move quickly, and you have to be willing to work harder than everyone else, because the big brands out there, they have a ton of resources. You say, oh, we have 150 people. That sounds big. And most of these big CPG companies have 14, 15, 20,000 people globally. 150 is nothing, right? And so we have to put in 2, 3, 4, 5 times the work and be really efficient with what we do and try and mitigate the red tape. Because if you let the red tape get in the way of making decisions because you're too afraid to have a foot fault or a mistake, you're going to snuff yourself out before you go. So I think that's the big piece.
Chew on that.
Chew on all of that.
Chew on all of that. If you want more from us, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, and check out the website chewonthis.io.